What's up, guys? It is Monday, April the 14th on the Flies back again, and we're doing a little intro for this week's episode. We'll probably start doing the intro for all our episodes. A lot going on with the On the Fly, the final score. We've got WrestleMania coming up. I'll have my buddy Kyle on later on this week. We'll be talking about our WrestleMania predictions and talking about the Hall of Fame. Uh, one one time WWE got it right. It finally did something I've been talking about for a while. We'll get to that later in the week. What we got today? Episode 141. It's titled Joey Cassata, Order of the Rose. Joey Cassata. Now, if you don't know who he is a musician. He's an author. He's an actor. A little bit of everything. Joey's been on was on an earlier episode with myself and Joe Decker as we did a album review for Ace Frehley's 10,000 Volts, which Joey played on a couple of tracks on that album. So we were happy to have him back to talk about his latest offering, which hold on, let me get it for you. His latest offering is a book, Order of the Rose, and it's a story based on the Kiss album, Music from the Elder, which as a Kiss fan, I it's a polarizing album for people because some people love it, some people hate it. I don't think anybody's in the middle on it. As a kid, I got this album right here. This is the album. I got this for Easter in 1982 as an 8-year-old diehard Kiss fan at the time. I wore this album out. It still plays great though. Still has the original cover or whatever you call that thing. Um, but yeah, so he finally did what people have wanted to for a while. He wrote a book about how the elder would pan out in his eyes. And like I said, it's based on the story of the elder from the album. Um, Great album. A lot of what you call Easter eggs planted in there for Kiss fans. If you're a fan of like fantasy stories, if you're a fan of Kiss, this is a great book. I got it on a Tuesday afternoon about 4 o'clock, and I finished it. It was 50 pages. I finished it the next night about close to 9 o'clock, and I was messaging him uh, the entire time. He told me, he said, message me, let me know how it goes. So great book, guys. This not look, I'll talk about it in the interview. This not only is a great book. This could be a freaking movie. I think it's good enough where he could get somebody to make a movie out of this. But he talks a lot about this in the book. In the interview, we talk about other projects he's done. The Wrestling with Joey Licious project. He's also been in. I mean, like I said, he played with Ace Frehley on a couple tracks on his album. He's played with ZO2, Eric Martin. We talk a little bit about when he made it Kiss Cancer Goodbye this past. Gosh, it doesn't even feel like it was December, but yeah, they did the entire Elder album, and he also did another band where they did the entire Creatures of the Night album from Kiss. Great stuff. Great guy. He took time out of his busy schedule because I know he's one of the hardest working guys you'll see out there between a podcast, books, playing, what have you. Joey is a hardworking man, and he even gives us a little insight at the end on an upcoming project that he might have going on. You'll hear that at the end. And guys, hang on tight at the end after the interview's over. He made a trailer to announce the book, and it is a great trailer. It's about 2 minutes long, but hang on and watch that at the end. And you guys hadn't noticed. If you follow me, you need to follow me on TikTok, and I'll get because I had to change my TikTok. This TikTok up here, where is it at? I can't point to it. You see it up there. It is right there. That is not the same again. I need to figure out how to change that. I've got a new TikTok. I'll put in the episode description. Follow me on there. Follow me on social media, Facebook. Give us a subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast at, and enjoy this episode. If you haven't noticed, I've been running a lot here. I usually get back in my running kick when the weather gets warm again. But I'm going, and I've been running for 5 or 6 years. And I'm almost at 3,000 miles. I keep it on my Nike app on my phone. Going for 3,000 miles overall, and I'm going to make a pledge here to go get 365 miles, 1 mile a year, 1 mile a day, excuse me, for the whole year. And you'll see some of my posts on social media about it. But when I today I ran 4 miles, and guess what? When I got through, see that right there? I have one of these waiting for me. One of these great energy drinks from Hometown Nutrition. You guys check them out over there. If you're ever in the area, go to Muffinsboro, North Carolina, and check out Debbie and Kim over there at Hometown Nutrition. I've been going for, gosh, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. It's been a while, and they're some great people. They've got great drinks over there. So you check, and they also do protein shakes over there. So if you want to cut out a lunch, cut out eating like a lunch or something, go get you a shake. And now this thing's playing. Go get you a shake from Hometown Nutrition. I promise you they'll treat you well. With that being said, guys, like I said, hang on to the end after the interview's over. Watch the trailer, and be sure to share this with your friends. Like I said, the more you share, the more you subscribe, the more you follow me, the more it gets out there. And you guys enjoy this interview. Episode 141, Joey Cassata, Order of the Rose.
Hey, everybody. This is Joey Cassata from ZO2, Ace Frehley, and Eric Martin. You're listening to On the Fly with Stevie, my brother, and yours.
You are listening to On the Fly.
This is the Pain Train Preston Quinn, one half of the Extreme Horsemen. And when I want to hear music and entertainment, I come right here. You're listening to On the Fly with Stevie and Warden.
What's up, guys? On the Flies here, back again tonight. And tonight, this guy's been on before. This is his second time on here. So 3 more times he gets in the Five Timers Club. He gets the jacket and everything. Like we've got like the Saturday Night Live ripoff, and that is a select group there. There's only 2 in the Five Timers Club. But with us tonight, man, this guy does a little bit of everything. And I will say this. He is, I've followed him over the last 4 or 5 years. The hardest working man in show business because he does a little bit of everything, whether it's writing, it's podcast, it's music, drumming. I mean, this guy stays busy all the time, and I think he wouldn't have it any other way. With me tonight is, what can you say? Author, musician, podcaster, Mr. Joey Cassata. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, buddy. How are you? Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back, and hopefully one day I will become a 5-timer and get that jacket. I'd love to have it.
We don't have a Hall of Fame here. We have the Five Timers Club. We don't have a Hall of Fame.
I'll take it.
Doing good, buddy. And tonight, we're talking about something that, man, I just got this book that Joey just wrote. And you guys know I'm a huge Kiss fan, and this album right here, back in Easter, and I'll put the picture up here of me getting it. I've had it up here before. Easter of 1982. This came out in 81, but I didn't get it till Easter of 82. My parents decided to get it for me. You look at the inside the table, the Elders, Kiss music from the Elder, and as a kid, 8 years old, Kiss could do no wrong for me. I listened to the Elder on my turntable. I remember getting the little sleeve in there that was clear. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Oh, wow, you still have it in there. Jesus.
Yeah.
Is that your original copy?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and played it over and over again. And I kept looking at music from the Elder. And usually when you saw that meant there was going to be a movie. And that was, I guess, the plan at the time. But everybody knows the Elder didn't do too well in sales. I love the Elder, love the album. And we'll ask Joey his opinion on the Elder. I pretty much know his opinion on the Elder. But tonight we're going to talk about. Joey's wrote a book called The Order of the Rose. It's a fantasy novel inspired by the music from the Elder. This is something that, and I told him once I got the book one day, and this is a 340 some page book. I got it in the afternoon one day, and by the next night at about 9 o'clock, I was finished. And I told
Crazy.
him I was messaging him. I said, I'm not going to be able to put this book down." And I wasn't. But Order of the Rose, you guys see it right there. Fancy. I mean, the book looks great. The cover looks great. Did you design this cover?
Yeah, I did. I designed the whole book, the layout, the cover, the back, all of that. Obviously, we'll get deep into the Elder and what we think and stuff. So this book, Gene and Paul from Kiss always said in the beginning of Kiss, they wanted to put the band on stage that they never saw. Right? They created Kiss because they wanted more out of bands that they were coming to see. And that's really why I went ahead and did this book. I've always been a big Elder fan. Music from the Elder was the first album that I ever bought with my own money. I saw Kiss in 1979 at Madison Square Garden. I was 5 years old. I was hooked for life. Started drumming that Christmas. It set me on my musical journey. And then, 1981, when the Elder was released, I remember vividly going to my mall, Kings Plaza Mall in Brooklyn, and running up to the Sam Goody and checking out the new Kiss. And I saw that album that you had right there with this goofy cover and this hand and, this gold knocker on it. And, I didn't know what it was. I was like, what the hell is this? I wasn't even I know it says Kiss in the corner, but Kiss is, synonymous with their looks and their makeup and all that stuff. And I was actually unaware if this was really a Kiss album because I grew up in Brooklyn and my grandparents grew up in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. And I would always go to West 8th Street. That's where Electric Lady Studios are. But they always had these bootleg record shops there. And I would buy Kiss bootlegs records in the early 80s, 1980, 81. And the records always sounded like crap. They never sounded good. And I actually thought when I saw the Elder for the first time, I thought it might have been one of those bootlegs. I was like, this can't be a real Kiss record. It looks ridiculous. So instead of buying the vinyl, I had my trusty Walkman with me. I never left home without it. And I bought the cassette just because I said, let me buy the cassette. I'll put it in my Walkman right now. And if it sounds like a bootleg, I'm going to immediately return it. Put it in. Back then, the original track listing that was released, The Oath was the first song. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this sounds incredible. I quickly looked at the liner notes and it said Kiss, Ace Frehley, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Eric Carr. And, I basically lost my mind. Needless to say, I bought the record, kept it, took it home. And, it's a story that I've been wanting to know what the story of the damn Elder was, could have been, should have been for almost, 40 some odd years now. And just like Gene and Paul did when they first started Kiss, I said, you know what? We're never going to know what this story could have been. I'm going to use the premise. And I was inspired by the premise. I didn't use Kiss characters or the Kiss name or any of that stuff. And I wrote this book called The Order of the Rose, what I thought could have been the story of the Elder.
And it is freaking awesome, guys. How long did this take you to put together, Joey?
So it's funny, obviously I'm creative. I can't sit still. I'm always creating. Like the second this was done, I'm on to my next thing. I'm not even thinking about this anymore. Of course, I'm into promoting it. I'm doing that other stuff, but I'm already brainstorming my next thing. And we'll get into all the other little stuff that I've done over the years. But this project started. So I'm not sure if you know, but I'm sure you do know. Back in December, I did a show called Kiss Cancer Goodbye in Sarasota, Florida, and some incredible musicians and myself recreated the whole Music from the Elder record, cover to cover, the original track listing. Um, it really had almost never been done before. I know a couple bands maybe have tried it, but we went to such great lengths to really capture every moment, every nuance of this record, really like never before. It's for us, it's never been really even tried. Never mind accomplished. So, we got the call. It was myself, Todd Kearns, Zach Throne, who are all part of Bruce Kulick's band, Jeremy Osbrock, who is Ace Frehley's guitar player, and Tyson Leslie, who is Vixen's keyboard player.
Right.
So, all-star guys. Somehow I got included in this great bunch of guys. And, we started really diving into the record sometime in October. Now, the show was in December. And from diving into the record like never before, again, I was always a fan, always liked the record, always listened to the record. But when you dive in to try to learn a record, it's different. You go in with a different brain, different side of your brain is listening, and now diving into all the nuances of the lyrics, the feelings, the story, the dynamics, the just the musicality of it. And once I started really dissecting the Elder like never before, I got inspired to basically start writing this book. So I started, and I started it loosely in October, and I just started writing down some ideas and some premises and just all the, the outline of what I thought it could be. I didn't even know, honestly, if I was really going to do it or not. And then once we did the album, and it was so well received, and it's, the whole record is on YouTube, the full performance, it's on the Kiss Cancer Goodbye page in its entirety. And it's on my page with each individual song, my YouTube page, Joey Cassata at YouTube. And, once we did it, uploaded it, and got, we got immediately like 50,000 views on it. People 500 comments, people losing their minds how well received this was. That's when, and this was, a couple weeks into December after the show. That's when I really started literally diving into chapter 1, prologue in chapter 1. So I had the premise, which, took a couple months to really outline the premise. And then once I started writing the story with the dialogue and the chapters, it flowed through me so fast you would not believe.
I cannot believe you did that in that little bit of time, because I mean it's well put together. This is, guys, I promise you, if you're a fan of the group, if you're a fan of the Elder, this is, and just like I told him, because I know I aggravated him, because I was sending him messages after almost every other chapter, I would say. And one of the things I said at the end, the last message I sent him last night when I finished, this is the story that all the fans of this album wanted to see for so many years. And this, I mean, honest to God, I don't even know if you're even thinking about it. This could be a freaking movie and would be great. I mean, whether it was animated, live action, it would be a great movie. I mean, for not just for fans of the group, not just for fans of the Elder, but this would be a great, of this genre, a great movie for this genre.
Amazing, dude. And I can't appreciate that enough. You have no idea. And trust me, you are not bothering me at all. The funny part is, so Steve is messaging me back and forth about the progress and what he thinks of this chapter and what he thinks of this character. And the funny part is, as we're recording this on, Thursday, April 10th right now.
Right.
And technically, a lot of people don't know this, but technically the book is not officially for sale yet. And what I mean by that is, the process that I go through, I do all self-publishing through Amazon. It's my own publishing company, Sada Entertainment, and I publish it through Amazon. This is my 5th book now. So, I'm kind of an expert at the process of how to publish and format and all that stuff. My first book, my autobiography, Start With a Dream, took me forever. Not so much to write it, but to actually get it published. The formatting was always messed up. I had no idea what I was doing. It was trial and error. Now I'm like a seasoned veteran. I know what to do, what not to do. So the process on Amazon, just to give you a little insight of why it's not technically for sale, it will probably be officially for sale when this goes live, when this episode airs, and you can buy it either way when this episode airs, but I just haven't promoted it like it's on sale yet. And the reason why is Amazon has certain steps, and I wanted to release this as, the hardcover, which is out.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to have the audiobook ready and the Kindle ready at the exact same time. And the reason that being is I'm a big fantasy reader. I love that genre. I loved Lord of the Rings as a kid, and so many fantasy books over the years. I'm a big David Ennings fan, and Robert Jordan, and Terry Goodkind, and all these big authors that I read series and series after series. So I'm an avid reader, but I just had a feeling in my bones that a lot of Kiss fans would not have the patience to read a 350-page book about some obscure album called The Elder. So what I wanted to make sure I released the audiobook to coincide at the same time as the hardcover. So to do that on Amazon, you actually have to physically release, to have it uploaded on Amazon, the actual print copy. And then, I'm allowed to pull that copy from Audible to create the audiobook. So I had the audiobook created already. It was all done. It was narrated. I got a narrator to narrate it. I even put music to it. I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but there's a band called Ancient Door, and they did a tribute to The Elder. It's on Spotify. It is an incredible recreation of The Elder, but it's also flushed out a little bit more, like this bigger orchestration in some pieces. And they were kind enough to allow me to use pieces of their audio inside the audiobook. So the audiobook is not only narrated by this incredible narrator, and it has this, this tone to it, but it also will have little clips of songs throughout to kind of coincide with the story of the album. So to do that, like I said, I had to release this on Amazon, and now Audible is still kind of in the process of reviewing my files for the audiobook, and it always takes at least 10 days, and that's 10 business days. So hopefully by the time this airs, the audiobook will also be available on Amazon. But right now on Amazon, either way, you can get the hardcover. You can even get a soft cover, which I printed as well, because the hardcover is not available worldwide. And you can also get it on Kindle. But that's the story behind it. That's why, dude, when you were saying you were bothering me, even though it hasn't been released yet, I already looked. There has been a couple hundred copies sold already, which is incredible because I really just posted a teaser trailer. But I've been getting some reviews from the first few people that have started reading it, and you're one of the first few that finished the book with some raving reviews, and I appreciate that.
Definitely. So it's just funny getting into the book, and as a Kiss fan, when you get to reading it, and I don't know if that exact word. I know the audio word is earworms, but I don't know. It's little subtle things that
I call them Easter eggs.
Yeah, Easter eggs.
Yep. So if you watch any Marvel movie and stuff, you'll always you don't if you're not a big Marvel fan, you don't need to know what they are. But if you are a big Marvel fan, there's always like little hidden Easter eggs about characters and whatnot. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and there's little things that you threw in there, little lines that you threw in there that reference. Like there was one with I want to get the names right here, Genius and Stanley's the Star Child, when they're talking about during the last fight on the battlefield. Let's throw another log in the fireplace and get this done. I mean, that right there, I laughed as soon as I seen it, and I mean, there's other things in there. The characters are so well wrote out. One of the best parts of the whole thing that I the I think it was chapter 42, the trials of it. Was it the trials of the echoes?
Oh, the Isle of Echoes.
Isle of Echoes. When they have to give up something, they had payment received, payment made, and that right there, because I messaged you as soon as I got through. That's the best chapter of the whole book right there. And I don't want to give away too much, but and then you killed me with with the next chapter. I was just like, holy crap! This, and I mean, I'm sitting there reading, I'm telling, and my daughter, she knows I'm a kiss tard or whatever you want to call it. She's like, yeah, daddy, like that. She knows how much I love Kiss, and she could tell by looking. But the relationship between Ferric, which I thought was great character there.
Ferric the Fox. Obviously, people could guess who that might be
Yeah.
inspired by, right?
And Pitoria, I guess that's how you say it.
I pronounce him Pitiora.
Pitiora, okay. So because you have to correct me on this stuff, but the relationship between those two, and the way that comes, that the climax of that relationship, so great. That was after I told you that chapter was my favorite. That came up, and I was like, "Geez, you're killing me, dude. You're killing me." But, it's just, as a Kiss fan, guys, I promise you, you will absolutely love this book. And even if you're a fan of of this kind of fantasy, you'll love this book. I mean, it's got everything. And I told you, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but honestly, I don't know if you've even thought about it, but movie stuff. This could be a freaking movie, Joey.
Listen, dude, obviously, I would love more than anything for that to happen. The story, listen, it's the age-old story of a boy and a prophecy and an evil presence that's, taking over the world. And listen, even though it was inspired by the Elder, I'm pulling from all different references. I utilized the avatars. Kiss is doing the Avatar show. I utilized the avatars, but the avatars, if you kind of read into the avatars and the Elder, their dynamic, it's very, angels and God and Satan and, that more of that lore than it was anything based on the Elder, where, the elders are, the premise of the book is this boy has a prophecy to, defeat the Dark One or the Dark Light, or the malevolent order, whatever, however you want to look at the darkness that's in the book. And, he gets helped along the way by these avatars who are, obviously inspired by the members of Kiss. And the elders are, these godlike beings kind of pulling the puppet strings of everything that's going on. And, it's just, like I said, it's pulled from all hundreds of different Greek mythology and religious lore, and obviously the Elder album, and all these different concepts rolled into one to create this great epic fantasy story. And, what I tried to do was, of course, I tried to put in all the Easter eggs for the Kiss nerds like us. I wanted to make sure that, Ferric the Fox is, of course, inspired by Eric Carr the Fox. And, Genius is the dragon, the avatar of fire. We know who he is inspired by, Gene Simmons, of course. But, it's something where if you don't even know Kiss, you could, this is just a generic fantasy novel that I really think could hold up in today's world with the story that it tells. But being a Kiss fan just adds that extra, holy crap, I never thought I would hear this character. Or when you brought up the Forgotten One, we won't give it away, but
Yeah.
I have this character in the book, the Forgotten One. He's like a massive titan, and he has one giant swollen hand. So, we know where these characters are all coming from, but you don't need to know the Kiss story. But if you do know the Kiss story and the history of Kiss and what the Elder, the songs are about, it definitely makes the book more enjoyable.
And one character in there that you guys really need to keep your eye on too is Vincentius. That that really got when I messaged him after that guy comes along. I was like, oh, okay, I know who this was supposed to be too. Um, but yeah, there's so many like you said, little Easter eggs in there, song lyrics, or it's just a great book, guys. And I talking about when you got, and I hate to go backtrack a little bit, but Kiss Cancer Goodbye, and nobody has ever tried that I could, maybe some little bands have tried to do. I think there was a tribute band that did a whole Elder set, but that right there, I mean, should let people know how much people love the Elder. I mean, they want to see stuff like that, and that's something that And I know Kiss when you hear Paul talk about, especially Paul and Gene both. Uh, that was a huge mistake, and yeah, it was not a Kiss album, but it was a good album to me. I mean, you take away, and really on this album, if you take away Odyssey and that fanfare, they're rocking songs the rest of the way.
Yeah, listen, I mean, was it the right Kiss album at the time? Of course it wasn't. We know that. But I also think Kiss didn't do a great job promoting it. I think they should have leaned into more of this fantasy type, atmosphere, meaning, at the time you're talking 81, 82, you're talking Dungeons and Dragons is very big, Conan the Barbarian, Dragon Slayer, Clash of the Titans.
Oh God.
Ronnie James Dio is coming out with stuff with dragons based stuff, and that whole genre is really very popular. And I think if they would have pushed hard to capture, because I know for me, a lot of those, fantasy fans, Frank Frazetta fans, the art, they were all metalheads. And I think if they would have pushed for that fan base more with the cover, and whether it was the tour or the promo behind it with dragons and fire and magic and, like my book is, I think it would have been a bigger success. But I always say the reason why I'm such a big Kiss fan is not because of just the first 6 classic records. Are they iconic with the 4 original members? Of course they are. It's some of the greatest music to me ever produced. But I think I would have been bored if I got 33, 35, 36 albums of the same type of music. I don't want 36 rock and roll overs. As great as it is, I don't want 36 copies of it. I want The Elder. I want Crazy Nights. I want Carnival of Souls. I want Creatures of the Night, and Animalize and Asylum and Dynasty and Unmasked. And I want all these different genres of music that Kiss has covered through the years. And I know some are more popular than others, but that's in hindsight. Of course, you could always say this was a mistake, or that was a mistake, but in the grand scheme of the Kiss legacy, that's really, I think, what gives them the lasting power that they have today.
I mean, and people will tell me when I talk about, I love Unmasked. I got that as a kid too, and I played that record over and over again. I don't know if I have my original copy over there, but I've got my copy there. But I agree. You can't, and nothing against these guys, but if you want the same old album over and over again most of the time, AC/DC. They keep that same sound over and over again. Nothing against AC/DC because I like a lot of AC/DC stuff, but Kiss has changed their sound over and over again. Just like you said with um, this, with the Elder, with Unmasked, with Dynasty, Carnival of Souls when that came out. I mean, that was the grunge era, and I still like that. A lot of people give that crap, but I love Carnival of Souls. But you know, I'm like you. I don't want the same old thing over and over again. I want something different.
And again, in hindsight, Gene and Paul always talk about how they didn't sell well and they stink, but they were a flop. Yeah, you think they only think they stunk because they flopped, if that makes any sense. Meaning, if the Elders sold well at the time, they would be raving about it today, and it would be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It would have been Pink Floyd, The Wall. And the funny part is, like, at Kiss Cancer Goodbye, we also redid the full Creatures of the Night record. And, we posted the full Creatures of the Night. We posted the full Elder. We did a whole social media campaign. Between all the views that we got from all the videos that we released from those two records, we're approaching, I think, 2 million views at this point. And looking back, I don't think those albums combined sold 2 million copies. So it's so funny where, if you look back, yeah, they didn't sell well, but I still think they are beloved in history. Another thing I remember Paul always saying during the Dynasty tour, oh, we looked out the window and it was all families. And, we knew we went too far. It was like more like a circus than it was a rock concert. But what he doesn't realize, listen to 80% of the musicians that do podcasts and interviews today. I'm one included. Our first show was the Dynasty tour.
All right.
Mine, I think Brian Tishy, and I think God, all these guys went to the Dynasty tour for their first tour, and it created this generation of musicians who went on, Sebastian Bach and all these guys, Mike Portnoy, who went on to not only big and great things, but because they were kids on that Dynasty tour that went with their family. Sebastian Bach tells a story where he went, his parents were getting divorced, and it was the last thing they did as a family. They went to the Dynasty tour, and it changed his life. So, you can always see stuff at the moment and think it failed, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it was a bigger success than they ever think it was.
And I always wondered, and I know they didn't go on tour because the album sales were not good, what kind of stage show that would have been when they did the Elder. Because I think, that would have been monumental to see what they would have done on that tour if they would have been able to tour.
Yeah, listen, I've been to Dio concerts and Yngwie concerts where dragons are on stage and big giant props. I think if they would have leaned toward, again, it's hard to say because I think everything has an after effect. And I think, obviously, I Was Made for Loving You was a smash global hit. But I do think a lot of it alienated the original fan base a lot. Even though it was a big hit and it opened up a new fan base, it did alienate the first fan base. And then they came out with Unmasked, which was even poppier and more disco. Like, Easy as It Seems is more of a disco song than I Was Made for Loving You. Way more. And that album, of course, flopped. And I do think there's lasting effects because of that. Meaning, that album flopped and it caused the Elder to flop. And when the Elder flopped, it caused Creatures of the Night to flop. And then finally, Lick It Up, they take the makeup off and the song Lick It Up hits on MTV. That's what brings Kiss back. So I think the sales of Creatures and the sales of the Elder all start with I Was Made for Loving You. It all starts with that I Was Made for Loving You into Unmasked, which flopped. And then it creates that negative space for the Elder and Creatures, which to me, listen, I think Unmasked is a phenomenal record. But I understand that Kiss fan base who, loved She and Parasite and are now getting into Van Halen and Rush and all these other bands. When they hear Unmasked, I understand why they're alienated. So you're too far left to bring them back right to get to the Elder and Creatures.
If Elder is a big success, do we get an Elder Part 2 instead of Creatures?
It's a
or
great
something
question.
something in that line?
Yeah, listen, I don't know. I mean, I think if let's just say the Elder is a success like Tommy and The Wall were. I think we do get a movie. I think we get some kind of movie, whether it's a Kiss movie or it's a fantasy-based movie like Clash of the Titans, Lord of the Rings type movie where the Elder is just the soundtrack. I'm not sure. Again, that's why I wrote the book. I don't know where they were going. Of course, there's that little snidbit of a story inside the cover. I forget how it starts, but before when the earth was old, they were already, when the earth was young, they were already old, something like that, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So, it's like a paragraph, and you can't get the premise of this story within a paragraph. That's why, I wanted to flesh out the story, and inspired by what they were talking about throughout the record, and the book is paced. If you notice that too, the book is paced exactly like the record, which really
Oh yeah.
helped me. It helped me write quick because I had a map. So when people ask me, how did you write this book so fast? It's because I had a map. I knew I'm starting with just a boy. I know there's this boy, and he's going to start on an odyssey, and he's going to go on this quest, and he's too young, goddamn it, to be sailing by himself. And
He's looking
I
for the stallion and the mare.
yeah, but I have these little tiny pins in my roadmap that inspired me to bridge my story. So when I laid that out, originally when I started, like I said, when I started learning the Elder for Kiss Cancer Goodbye, when I laid out my map of where I had to get to, how do I get from A to B to C to D to finally reach I believe in me, and the boy, becomes what the prophecy thought he could be. How do I reach them all? It was easy. I just followed the stepping stones of the elder, and it kind of guided me. And of course, I sprinkled in, 20 other things along the way. And some of the creatures in it are the creatures of the night. And, they're getting attacked by all these different, demons and creatures. And, like you said, Vincentius is the avatar of chaos. He comes and, teams up with Blackwell, the evil, malevolent order. And, it's all inspired by little snippets of the elder, but it's my own story. It's fully brand new. It's just kind of mapped out utilizing those songs.
And you do have a female counterpart for the main character, Bethera. Is that how you say it?
Again, I don't want to tell readers how to pronounce, because it's so funny. I'm the same way. Like I said, I'm a big Robert Jordan fan. I read all the Wheel of Time books, and it's on Amazon Prime right now. They're redoing. They're doing it as a series. It's very much
Wow.
like this book. And I read 15 of those books, and they're 1,000 pages. And it's so funny watching the show. Every character and everything that they're saying in my brain as I read the books, I pronounce differently.
Yeah.
So I always get frustrated. But the way I pronounce her name, and when I'm writing it, Bethara.
Bethara. Okay.
But again, obviously, you could see the inspiration. Her name is Bethara. I was toying with maybe a Shandy type character, but I never got to it.
I was wondering about that. If that had came up, I was like, if someone with that name Shandy or something like that comes up, that would be freaking cool.
No, I toyed with it, and even the main character's name, main character, if you know how to pronounce the way I pronounce it, is Kalion. So his name is Kalion, and what do they call him throughout the book?
What, the boy?
Yeah, what do they call the boy? Like, what is his name for short? What does Beth call him and stuff?
Is it Key?
It's K-A-E, right? So it's K.
Yeah.
So the K is inspired by Kiss, right?
Yes.
So it's Kiss, K, right? So it's all little inspirations of, taking from that Kiss lore, but not infringing on any copyright or anything like that. I'm just trying to tell my own story, but I got inspiration from, the Kiss mythology all through the years. And like you said, in chapter 41, the Isle of Echoes, all of our characters up to that point in the book have to go through these isles. They have to escape the islands, and they have to go through these different trials. And one of them is all of them have to kind of face their paths, and their past is it's riddled with inspiration from real people that went through real problems. The Pitora character goes through a little addiction problem, and the Stan Lee's character goes, he has a little love fetish where he loves everyone and everyone loves him, but he doesn't love himself. And it's all little inspiration from all the Kiss biographies that I read and all the Kiss interviews that I've read, and who talks about this one this way and who talks about that one this way. And Gene, the genius character, might be a little greedy and pompous, and the Acios character might be a little spacey, if you would. So it's a fun trip down memory lane if you're a Kiss fan. I think people will really love all the little things. And it's funny, like I'm trying to get feedback. Everyone that's online that has read the book, I'm asking them, PM me, tell me what you think. Tell me what Kiss Easter eggs you find. And there's some that no one has found yet. Even like I had two guys edit the book for me to kind of clean it up and just shape it a little bit cleaner for me. And they even missed some of them.
See, now I'm going to have to go back and read it again, look at these.
Tiny, and dude, these are so like obscure, ridiculous references that, if you get them, great. But I don't even know if I would get them reading it. I mean, I wrote it, so of course I know where they are, but they're
Right.
very obscure.
And one of the things, that we as Kiss fans, when you read this book, that I think most of the Kiss fans will enjoy is when the conversations between the avatars, because that is about like real life. And I really wish, if Paul and Gene and Ace and Peter read this, they see this, and and I'm sure that's maybe Joey will inspire them
Wouldn't that be something?
to bury the hatchet and finally. I mean, because look, dude, this is ridiculous. They're you don't. I mean, first of all, and I'm going to go on a little rant here, but we're not promised tomorrow, no matter how old you are. But these guys are in their 70s now. These guys did something phenomenal. I mean, that I'm sure when they started this band, they never thought in a million years that, you know, 50 years from that day, there were people would be still be big time fans of that band. So freaking drop the ego and realize that you four did something together that a lot of people don't get to do, and you should appreciate each other for that. I know, Bert. I mean, forget all that crap you said about each other. Forget all the crap that's water under the bridge. You don't know how much longer you got, so you need to bury the hatchet. And I mean, I don't see that happening, but I'm
Listen,
hoping.
it happened once before. No one ever thought it could happen. In the 80s, you know,
Oh,
even in, during that Kiss Exposed time, Gene and Paul are digging Peter and Ace in that
all the
video. You hear every interview
time.
from 84 through 90. They're giving little shots at each other. They're not on good terms at all. And it happened once before. They got back together. Now, I think it was for financial purposes. I think Kiss were lower than they ever were in 95 doing the convention tour. I loved it. I actually think it made them way better musicians. I think that Unplugged tour made them incredible at their craft. And I think it was phenomenal that they did it. But I understand, they were down and out. They were playing little, hotels and stuff like that, tiny little venues. And the reunion tour was out of desperation, but it happened. And that's part of, the reason how I wrote these characters in the book. As much as they, in the book, some of them haven't seen each other for decades or centuries.
Yeah.
And what I tried to do, and I don't know if it came across, but I tried to make those characters feel like brothers that haven't seen each other for a long time. And no matter what problems were in the past, they're always happy to see each other, and they can always revert right back to being friends and brotherly again.
It definitely came across as that. But you talk about them getting back together again. I can remember, they did the Unplugged deal, but when they came out of the Grammys, I'm on the phone with a girl, and I'm like, talk blah blah. And the Grammys are on, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, here comes Tupac, and then I shocked. We're here. We want to shock the people. And I look, and I'm on the phone with her. I was like, oh shit. And she's like, what? I said, holy shit. And I said, I gotta go. Click. Like, yeah, needless to say, I didn't go out with that girl. But yeah, I'm just hoping they
But
get.
listen, I don't think they're getting back together to play
Oh
and
no,
tour.
no,
It's not even something I want. What I would love, I've been saying it for years. What I would love more than anything, the four of them on a couch, on a couple couches, just with one moderator, and just to talk about their legacy. Just talk, not even just air out differences, just talk about their legacy. Talk, I want to see them be brothers one last time. And
Yep.
again, like even with the book, I remember, so I posted, and if you could post it on this episode, it'd be great. I posted a little trailer video for this book. So it's a visual trailer. I had some artwork done for some of the characters that are in the book. And they're just, I don't want to give too much away of what, because I like when you read a book, your imagination kind of builds the story. So I don't
Yeah.
want to pigeonhole myself or what a character could look like or what this character could look like, but I wanted to do a little hype trailer on what you're going to expect in this book. And inside the trailer, I kind of show a little shot of the avatars, which is literally just like on the cover, four cloaked figures, literally no faces, dude, but with four distinct colors. And obviously, what are the
Yeah.
colors, right?
Yep. The
You
colors just
know,
like they would for the solo album. Purple.
right. So we got green, we got red, we got blue, we got purple. Now, I had so many people texting me and email me, these, smart Kiss fans. Hey, dude, if you're doing something based on the Elder, it's not supposed to be the green. It's supposed to be orange for Eric. What is wrong with you? You got that wrong already? Guys, read the book.
Yep.
Ferric the fox, who is one of the main characters in the book, he's an avatar, an ancient being, but he's a fox, and he's one of my favorite characters of the
Oh,
book. And
definitely.
I knew the Eric type fox character had to be a big part of this book. To me, Eric was always my favorite member of Kiss. He's to me the unsung hero that never got his credit. Obviously, he passed away way too young,
Right.
and he was in those years where they weren't the biggest band in the world, right? So I wanted to make sure Eric was really the glue that held all of these characters together. And by the end, when his last interaction with Pitiora, the Avatar of Beasts, their last little interaction when Pitiora has to pass the baton to Ferric, it kind of seals and creates that Elder lineup.
Yep. And that, like I said, the chapter before, I messaged Joe and I said, "This is my favorite chapter." And then when that happened, I was like, "Oh, geez, dude, that was freaking awesome there." Um, Getting away from this a little bit. I know you have other projects, dude, because we share another love, and that's wrestling. Wrestling with Joey Licious, because I've been a wrestling fan since '85, but me and you're up north. I'm in the south, so
Oh yeah.
I
So
didn't
you
get to
you
see.
NWA land.
I'm Crockett. I'm Crockett
Yeah.
guy. I mean, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Rock and Roll Express,
Oh
Magnum.
God.
I mean, but then, and I'm in a very, very small town. To this day, we still never got cable through this town. So we just got high speed internet a couple years ago, but being able to see the WWF back in the day, seeing some of those iconic characters, and I was because people were like, "Oh, you either watch Crockett or you watch WWF," and especially when the Monday Night Wars came along with WWF or WWE and WCW, but to see the Wrestle with Joey Licious character and see some of the characters that you've had on there, man, that is freaking out. Like I said, I don't want to jinx you, but you have come up with some great stuff. I mean, great characters, great concepts. Talk a little bit about Wrestling with Joey Licious.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things where if I it's something I've always wanted to see. So I just went ahead and created it. Long story short, I'm a big wrestling fan. Like you said, I grew up in New York, so I saw all the WWF events at Madison Square Garden. I was there when Hulk Hogan won the title from the Iron Sheik. I was 10 years old. It was 5 years later after I saw the Kiss concert. So Kiss and wrestling, from my autobiography, were my world. It was everything. I was either going to become a professional drummer or a professional wrestler. I was a really big kid. I was probably 5'10", 150 pounds in the fourth grade, fifth grade. So I was a massive kid. And seventh grade comes, I just stopped growing. So, I always thought I was going to go that wrestling route. I wanted to be Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and Big John Studd and maybe Kamala and it never worked out because I stopped growing. And obviously I was a drummer also, and the drums just kind of took over from there. And the Wrestling with Joey Licious world is kind of this alternate reality where I went off to be a professional musician. What if I didn't? And I went off and became, or tried to become, a professional wrestler. So, my backstory with acting, I was on a show called Z-Rock for a couple seasons. It was on IFC, scripted comedy based on my real life band ZO2. We were kids musicians during the day and rock band at night. And it was just a fun, zany comedy, think, Curb Your Enthusiasm, that type of Seinfeld type comedy. And one of the episodes, we were going to do a wrestling themed episode. And believe it or not, Ric Flair was the original person we were supposed to have on. And Rick was unavailable for the episode. And we got Chris Jericho to do the episode, which turned out to be probably 1,000 times better because he was absolute gold during this episode. And in that episode, the producers and writers wanted they wanted me to dress like Hulk Hogan. They wanted Dave, our bass player, to dress like the Ultimate Warrior, and so on and so on. And I was like, nah. I said, that's all right, but why don't we do like, we're idiots on the show. Why don't we make our own wrestling characters, and we'll do our own characters? And then he's like, well, what the hell does that mean? So in my just growing up, me wanting to be a wrestler my whole life, I already had my persona picked out, my look picked out. I even used to go to like bars when we used to go out as, mid-20s. During the Monday Night Wars, I would go to a bar dressed as my wrestling character with boas on. And my wrestling character growing up was Joey Licious. And so what I did for that Z-Rock episode, I said, I created this character, Joey Licious, years ago. I said, why don't we do this? And the other two guys wound up doing that. So it wound up being the biggest episode of the season. So after that, I just got the acting bug. And, I knew I wasn't going to play a physical, a physicist or, a mathematician or some kind of scholar but I could play Joey from Brooklyn. I could play Joey the wrestler. So I wind up writing a show called Wrestling with Joey Licious. And, the premise of the show was, I'm now, I'm a wannabe wrestler my whole life. I never made it to the big time. I'm in my 40s now, and I'm struggling, wrestling in high school gyms. And throughout the show, wrestling legends appear to me in my imagination to kind of give me advice. And it never works out. And the clips are on YouTube. I have about 10 Wrestling with Joey Licious episodes on YouTube now. You can check them out. Just type in Wrestling with Joey Licious. They'll come up. We've had Mick Foley on. We've had Roddy Piper, Jimmy Snuka, the Iron Sheik, Jake the Snake Roberts. Anyone who's anyone was on the show. And these guys basically come to give me advice. And by the end of the episode, they're kicking my ass, and the advice falls apart. So I also, I went ahead, right before COVID, we were very close to securing a full-fledged series for this. And because of COVID, everything had to start all over again. So during COVID, what I did with my partner, we wrote 2 Wrestling with Joey Licious books, which are also on Amazon, and they're just being released on audiobook right now. So if you go on to YouTube or any podcast station, Apple Podcast or Spotify, you can listen to the full Joey Licious audiobook. It starts, with me down on my luck, and eventually some good things happen. I get the shot at the big time, and whether I fail or succeed, you'd have to tune in. But it's just a great story of this wannabe wrestler that never made it, and all these big wrestling stars are co-starring in it. It's it's a passion project, and it's so much fun to do.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, guys, this is one of the hardest working men in show business right here. But I'm not going to take up much more of your time. I know we've been on here about an hour now, but tell us where we can find the book, and of course, we can catch you on Podcast Rock City with your best buddy Sonny Pooney.
That piece of human garbage.
Yeah, guys. If you haven't watched Podcast Rock City, you'll love the banter between those two, and of course, Joe Polo up there. He's a great guy. And then Top 5 with Joey Cassata. You can check that out. I hadn't seen an episode lately, so I'm sure as busy you are, you had time for that.
That's what happened. I've just been busy, obviously, with the books and, doing a lot of shows and events coming up. So we'll be back to that soon. But like I said, the Joey-licious audiobook is airing in its place right now. So for the last, for 10 weeks in a row, we're going to be airing an episode of the Joey-licious audiobook, which is each episode is one of the episodes of the first season of what Joey-licious could and hopefully will be one day on a streaming network. But for now, you can go listen to the audiobook. But again, for my new book, The Order of the Rose, a fantasy novel inspired by music from the Elder. You can get it strictly on Amazon worldwide. The hardcover is available in most markets, but also the soft cover. If you're a traveler and you want something a little lighter, soft cover is available worldwide in every market. And the audiobook and Kindle are also, hopefully when this airs, available. If you're not a big reader, check out the audiobook. It's lots of fun. The audiobook even brings like this other little element to it. Like, you read the book now, dude, so you might want to go back when the audiobook comes out, listen to the audiobook, because you can feel a little bit more of the tension. And it's almost like a different experience. It's a lot of fun. So check it out on Amazon.com. Books are about roughly $25 on there. The Kindle's even cheaper, and the audiobook is going to be even cheaper than that. So check it out. Check me out on social media at Joey Cassata across all platforms. Check out the full music from the Elder performance on either my YouTube page. Just type in Joey Cassata on YouTube. It'll pop up, and you can see the whole music from the Elder performed top to bottom. Pretty fun.
Yeah, I couldn't get over that. That was because that was I think y'all did that on a Friday, and I got home from work later than I thought, and y'all had already done it, and I was like, God knows. But then when y'all said y'all were gonna put it online, I was like, thank God. And then, man, you did not disappoint. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah, dude, we only had one run through too. We did one quick rehearsal the night before, and it was like, okay, let's see what we got.
Yeah. Well, you did awesome, guys.
Thanks,
all those guys did. But Joey, thank you so much, not only for coming on, but for doing this. But I said last night, thank you as a Kiss fan. Thank you for doing this, because this is a story I've always wanted since 81 or 82 when I first listened to it. I wanted to see that story, and this is, I can't see it, but I can read it. And I'll definitely, as a kid, big Star Wars fan. My mom used to always get me, you couldn't watch the movies all the time, but she used to give me those records that would tell the story, kind of like an audio book back in the day. So that's the first thing I thought of. I said, and that kind of brought it to life a little bit more too with that. But so I definitely will check out the audio book. But guys, be sure to check out Order of the Rose, Joey Cassata. Check him out on all his socials, Wrestling with Joey Licious, all this stuff. But thank you again, Joey. Thank you for coming on, taking time out of your schedule. I know you're a busy man.
Thanks so much for having me, brother. Anytime. Hopefully I'll work up my way up to the fifth track, and I got some new stuff in the works. What's that shirt you have on right there?
Phantom of the Park.
Maybe it's a little hint.
Is that a hint?
We'll see what happens.
Well, that's why I wore it tonight, because it kind of looks like, avatars. And guys, I promise you will not be disappointed with this book. Joey, thank you again, buddy. I appreciate you coming on and taking that time.
Thank you, my brother.
All right, guys, that is Joey Cassata, and this has been On the Fly.
In a time before time, When the elders shaped the stars and the avatars walked the earth, a prophecy was set in motion. A boy bound by destiny. A darkness rising from the depths. And a battle that will decide the fate of all creation. He never wanted to be a hero. He never asked for power. But when the creatures of the night come for him, when the stars whisper his name, he will have no choice but to stand and fight, guided by the avatars, hunted by the dark light, tested in fire and shadow. The time has come for Kalion to awaken.
Inspired by the legendary album, Music from the Elder, a fantasy novel unlike any other. Available on hardcover and audiobook, only on Amazon. Coming soon.